And we're live. The Juju Show, lucky number 13. Welcome to the party, everybody.
Woohoo.
We have got some guests we haven't chatted with in a while here for their second call on the Juju Show. So let's go around and do some intros. I'm Rick from the Juju Engineering Team, your bi-weekly host. And we've got James here. You made it again. How we doing?
What's up, guys? Doing well.
All righty. We have another James. Oh, no. We're in trouble.
This is going to get confusing, isn't it? So, I'm James Page. I'm a technical architect for the OpenStack engineering team at Canonical and PTL of the OpenStack Charms project. So.
Awesome. We have official titles and stuff in the house. We have Mr. Juju here. Mr. Juju.
Is that me? Hi. Charles Butler. Work on the canonical distribution of Kubernetes.
It's a Kubernetes representation. Yeah, you logged in onto the Juju username, so you're Mr. Juju for this show now. We've got Ryan. Ryan, introduce yourself.
Hi, Ryan Beisner with the OpenStack engineering team, engineering manager, and CI, QA, all that kind of fun stuff. I work with Juju and Maz and OpenStack and all that good stuff.
All right.
Happy to be here.
Let's jump into the community news. First off, I feel like we need to address the elephant in the room. 2.2, 2.2, where art thou, 2.2? Juju 2.2 is still in beta 4 as the latest release. The RC1 was going to drop this week, but there's an email to the list where basically the folks are working on a couple of hard issues that they really want to make into the RC. So it's being held back a week. So your 2.2 RC1, look for next week. Coming soon. Stay pinned to the Juju mailing list for updates. And I can't say this enough. Test it, bang on it, beat on it, find, try to break it. We'd much rather things were broken and found in testing than in beta and RC than to go after it goes out and go, whoops, if only we had known, we would have fixed it already. So this is your chance to just be abusive to Juju and really bang on it. Everyone getting their beta playing time in?
Oh yeah, I've beta 4 for the last 10 days or so. It's okay.
It's okay. Come on, it's better than okay.
Okay. It's okay.
I think there are a couple things we're waiting for.
It's allowing me to use my OpenStack cloud in the way I wanted it to, with all security disabled. So thanks to the Juju team for getting that feature in for me. So
awesome. I'm good to hear that.
So we generally pull in the release candidate and the proposed versions once they hit RC into our CI gates, as far as actually switching over on the underlying infrastructure.
All right, well, we'll see you next week.
OpenStack Charms. Yeah.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it for sure.
Speaking of testing, if 2.2 is not bleeding edge enough for you, and you really want to get the sharpest knife you can find, Andrew has put out an email to the list to try out persistent storage support in the 2.3 branch of work that's going on right now. So it won't be in 2.2, won't be in the RC1. This is a feature that is not ready enough to go into the RC, right? But this is a killer feature and something that I think that folks really should play with and try. Because what it's going to allow you to do, it's going to improve Juju storage support such that you can not just create a volume and give it to a unit, but you can then reuse that volume if the units go away and come back, or give it to new units or whatnot. So this is the old-fashioned case of I have data, it's on a persistent storage volume, I want to tear down and redeploy, or I want to add additional units and have, and use storage that I had before, or there's a bunch of use cases for this. Basically, I want my persistent storage to be as persistent as can be. And so support for this is something that I know a lot of folks have been really looking forward to. And now is the time to go try it, demo it. It's early, so the idea is to get feedback on the usability. Is the feature doing what you need it to do for your use cases around your storage needs? So this is one of those times where if you really want to have take part in kind of the open source building of a tool, does it do what I need it to do system, this is your chance to get in there and have your voice be heard. So check out the link to the mailing list archive. I'll have it in the show notes. Better yet, just subscribe to the Juju mailing list and you will get these lovely messages into your inbox as they come. And give a try out to the new storage feature. I might see if I can get Andrew to do. He is on the other side of the world, and therefore it's not conducive to get him on the Juju show. But maybe what we'll do is a a weekly show where we get a little highlight brought in and do a demo of this and get some additional feedback that way. So look for some more stuff around this coming in the near future. This just hit today, so I don't expect any of you guys to have played with it yet.
Looks like he's got a snap ready and available too. That's cool. Yeah,
so because we want it to be as easy for folks to try as possible, there is a snap, which means that you can install it and remove it very cleanly and easily. It doesn't interfere with your existing Juju, binaries on your system. Like, this is definitely a great way to try something. Again, so bleeding edge that hopefully it won't even leave a scar. You just remove the snap and you're back to your regular one.
Red hot.
Exactly. All right, next is my personal call out. I am working on some troubleshooting Juju documentation. I feel like it's something that's a bit of a weak spot in our current docs that we can improve on. And I think we help each other all out in IRC, and that's great and all, but we're not always available on IRC at all hours of every day. And so some self-help stuff would be good. So I've put a call out. I've got an initial branch of some troubleshooting kind of basics about, where to grab logs, how to increase logging levels and stuff like that. But I think there's more that, folks have in their own minds that we can pull together and curate and organize in a nice way that makes it easy to get some help. This is, specific tips for troubleshooting, say on MAS or LexD, if there's a particular, place to look in LexD for certain information, anything you guys might have that you find that are common things you help people with in IRC or whatnot, shoot my way. Reply to the email on the Juju list, shoot it to my personal email, but rick.harding@canonical.com, ping me on Twitter, I don't care. Just give me all your stuff and I will go and sort it and organize it and make it pretty and work on typing it out and getting it into the docs. So it's not final, doesn't have to be all pretty and perfect, but just give me what you got so I can help sift through and put together some really good, helpful stuff. How many folks here have got like a little Google Doc or a little sticky note with some little common things that they hit? That
my favorite one for getting out of a pickle is remove machine minus force. It's just wonderful. It's also very good at destroying clouds if you do it on the wrong machine, but that's a different story.
Yeah, these are definitely, some of these we'll have to curate for their danger versus maybe
it needs one of those yes, I really want to do this type flag.
Yeah,
really
the confirmation, like I would like to look at this doc page of things that have like little skull and bones on the top of the page. You have to sign a waiver before you can read the content and then go, hey, all right, feel free.
The good thing about that is you only have to learn that lesson once, right?
No. Sorry, but no.
That's the optimal use case, but as we all know, software is not always optimal. So let's see. Oh, go ahead.
No, it's again, my favorite trick is when I'm trying to cycle some LexD containers that are on physical machines, and I cycle the physical machine by mistake because I forget the /LexD thing, and then like a whole load of stuff disappears.
That's a good one. You know what? That's
Ryan. I know I've killed CI a few times by doing the wrong bit of maintenance. So.
These are stress tests. We call these stress tests, and
exactly.
Prove that you can redeploy your workload in a hurry. Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Sounds like we need a plugin to play with about instead of restart -container, and then you give it a container ID or something, and that way it can safety it a little bit. Cool. All right. Well, let's talk about the next thing. The next thing I want to highlight, Spicule is a company from some community folks in the Juju community. They've put together the big data charms that are out there with some of their own big data work, and they're putting together an actual like commercial product offering around this. And I want to highlight this for two things. One is that we love to highlight when folks in the community do awesome stuff. So consider this highlighted. And two, if you are doing something cool with Juju, I would like to put a call out to let us know so that we can highlight it and see what kind of awesome stuff's going on. Personally, I love to take stuff like this back to the engineering teams because we keep them in a cave below all air and access to the outside world in an effort to make them more productive. But funny, sometimes when they see that their stuff is in use, it makes them even more productive for great spurts of time. So these are great stories to go back and help the engineers, just everyone realize that a lot of the hard work gets paid off when people are doing really cool stuff with the software that you're writing and building. I mean, I'm sure, James, you guys must have some big clouds out there for some, unnamed big folks, and have some good, you get those stories back from the field. And the folks who spent all that time working on the OpenStack platform, on the charms and everything, makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside. I think he's gonna cry. Oh
yeah, no. It's gonna make me cry.
I'm choking up, man.
So call out, tell us what you're doing, and Spicule guys, congrats! It's awesome stuff, and we can't wait to see what you guys do next with it. Community highlight. There is a suggestion out about to stop recording the executing update status hook. And so for those who don't know, in the charms, there's a hook that you can run called update status, which is triggered on a regular basis. And it's supposed to be a great way for things to kind of check, is all good? And if all is good, it sets a status message on your Juju status command for that application. So you can see that it thinks it's all good or it's not. It's a very handy thing. I know a lot of folks leverage the update status hook for a lot of work, but because it runs on a timed interval versus like a real event interval, it can often be very busy when it's been running countless times over all of history for a production workload that's been in production for many months, and it can busy up some of the output of stuff. So there's kind of a back and forth going on different ideas for how to clean up the user experience while not losing any of the helpful information that's kind of tied inside of there. So what I would say is, folks that are using an update status hook, charmers, folks that have had problems with using the status history functionality in Juju because it was too busy based on this update status hook, go join the conversation and kind of get your feedback in and see if some of the solutions provided seem to work better for your needs than others. Have we all run status history and went, oh my God, there's a lack of useful stuff here because it scrolled off the page?
Occasionally.
Occasionally. Once or twice.
I mean, Jazz must be getting hit pretty hard with that, with the log sync and everything right now, the way things currently are, right?
I mean, because this is at a per model level, like this is for stuff running on the models itself. So, I mean, for those of us that we run and operate Jazz, their software we run there, but it's really on the users of the models themselves. And so operating Jazz itself doesn't tend to have a ton of, we don't get hit a ton with that. Like we don't have a ton of models running, we're just on the controllers themselves. The controllers aren't running, they're not a charm, so they don't have an update status hook on the controller itself. So it's not quite the same thing for that.
Don't they get a log sync though? That's the combined logs from all of the units in the model and all of their models.
So I mean, yes, the controllers do track the logs, but they're all kept independent. I mean, obviously the logs for your models can't be mixed with the logs for my model, such that I can see what's going on and whatnot. So I think it tends to get very filtered user by user, and there isn't a mass craziness where someone has to filter through all of it.
Totally.
Right. Cool. So another conversation going on in the community to join up. And finally, a bit of a call to community action on the Python-Django charm. So it's a charm that has existed for a little bit and has gotten pretty stale. And a user tried to go in and use it to deploy a Django workload and hit some issues. And there was a bit of a, hey, yeah, this is cool and helpful. We should try to, build on top of this and update it and get it back up to speed. And so I wanted, and this actually comes from you, James, that you were looking at playing with a new layer for Django and share it when you get something up. So I wanted to kind of put a call out for folks there's a lot of users out there that use Django. I'm sure that there's got to be some community building we can do around this to help bring folks together and put together a much more awesome Django layer and, Python-Django charm going forward. We'll get you some folks, James.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff actually to put into that. I've been kind of toying with the Python-Django charm and a bunch of different invariants of it over the years, and I think I've got something pretty dialed. I don't have it. It's not like production ready. I need to write some tests and get it into the store. So that'll definitely be some upcoming work here soon.
So there's one thing we can learn though from the experience I had with the Python, the Jupyter Notebook charm, was that getting it up and visible is much better than folks working independently, reinventing the same 10 basic functionalities to it and stuff. So if you've got something that doesn't have tests or whatnot, I still encourage you to get it up and put a link up to it. And hey, maybe some other folks can help write some tests and things. I always like when people write my tests for me. I find that that's how I'm most productive.
Oh, you lucky guy.
It doesn't happen that often. It's more of a pipe dream than an actual reality.
There is an argument to be made that the best person to write the tests for a feature might not be the person who wrote the feature.
So it's interesting.
In all cases, right?
Well, in
that case for sure.
What I always say is it depends. Those are fundamentally different sets of tests.
Yes,
what I come down to. There are tests that the author needs to write, and there are tests that someone who is not the author with no assumptions needs to help.
Exactly. Write. Ideally, you have both.
Exactly. Right. So I never say that the one is a substitute for the other, but that you need both. Ryan here, Mr. Test all the OpenStack stuff, coming through with his little words of wisdom.
I know, right? Can't help it. Sorry. I'll turn off my video now.
And with that, let's jump in and talk to our main topic, OpenStack. We haven't talked to OpenStack in months. Surely something's gone on and happened. I even hear there was like a gathering of OpenStack people in a single location.
It does
what
happen
happened?
From time to time.
Time to time. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think what's gone on since we were last on the show, which was, to be fair, a while back, and I don't think it was me either. So I think David got in, didn't he? So yeah. So I think probably since then we've had the first project teams gathering for the OpenStack projects, which was in Atlanta in February, I think, and we had pretty much the whole of the OpenStack Charms team there. So that was Ryan, myself, David, and a lot of other people, including some guys from IBM and some guys from Lenovo, and a few other drop-ins during the week as well. So we had a room, we had a schedule, we did our planning, we discussed a few gnarly issues, hacked on a few things, and generally all bonded as a team, which was good fun. I think Chuck was there as well, actually, thinking about it, hanging around and doing his Kubernetes stuff. So that was pretty cool. But so that was the kind of development focused gathering that we've had in the last 6 months. More recently, there was the OpenStack Summit in Boston, which we also attended as a team.
So is that OS now instead of ODS? I kept typing ODS, and I probably drove you nuts.
OpenStack Summit for a while now. I think it's because it used to be called the OpenStack Developer Summit, and that's stuck in so many people's minds. It's very hard to get out of habits. We all know that. So yeah, it's the OpenStack Summit, and alongside the OpenStack Summit ran the OpenStack Forum, which was a more operator-centric version of the design summit. So it was less about designing features; it was more about gathering feedback and understanding gnarly issues and
kind of an end user, users of OpenStack gathering or whatever.
Yeah, it was more users plus developers meeting and discussing like the current set of issues and where the project's going. Most of the projects also ran onboarding sessions for new contributors. So we had a bit of a Charms onboarding session one afternoon/evening, which was tough because we were contending with the beer crawl for the main conference marketplace. So we still had pretty good turnout. So I was quite pleased about that. But I did let everybody go early for their beer, of course. So, but anyway, it was good fun. It was a good event. Lots of good conversations, lots of good feedback. So it was cool.
All right. So I hear that along with the kind of shift in how the conferences and things are run, that there's a bit of a shift in the normal OpenStack charm cadence that you guys are shifting with as well.
So we to date, for the last couple of years, we've run a 3-month release cadence. So we've typically done a release that's been aligned to the Ubuntu and OpenStack release schedule, which until recently were the same. And then we've done a release 3 months later, which is kind of collation of bug fixes and maybe some new features. We had a bit of a introspection and review of that in the last couple of months, and kind of two things have made us decide we're going to move away from that. So we're still going to have a release cadence. We're going to do a release every 6 months now, and that will be aligned to the main OpenStack release, which is now no longer aligned to Ubuntu. So we'll have releases in February and August for the OpenStack Charms, and they'll give you deployable OpenStack on the latest LTS from Ubuntu on the day of OpenStack release. I've not missed one yet. Don't intend to start. So.
I think it's an interesting thing I wanted to ask you guys about was, at first when I heard that it was falling off the Ubuntu release, I'm like, oh no, this is going to be a huge headache because trying to get the software into the Ubuntu release with the packaging and going through all the packaging bit, it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort to make sure that you're in time for the Ubuntu release. And if you're not, then you get backward and all that. But I hear you guys are playing a lot with snapping up the OpenStack software itself. And
we are, yeah. But
in
actual fact, even in the kind of main Ubuntu Debian-based for packaging format, the release kind of ties nicely into feature freeze for the main Ubuntu release.
So it's off, but it's not so far off that it's
not so far off. It's painful, is the honest truth. So we were able to release the Ubuntu Cloud Archive for Xenial in advance of the main Zesty release. And we've been able to, there's been some updates into it since then, but there've been bug fixes and patches and polishing rather than kind of new versions of software coming in. And we've worked with the Ubuntu server team quite a bit to make sure that we kind of got everything in early so that wasn't too painful specifically. Yeah. But as you said, we have been looking at snaps. So Corey Bryant and myself have been looking at snapping OpenStack, and so snaps are a different style of distribution paradigm, and it's more of a kind of mobile phone big binary Bob type approach to getting your stuff in. It's transactional. It's pretty fast to get things installed and up and running, and we're having a bit of a focus this cycle on getting all of the core OpenStack projects snapped. And consumable via the Snap Store, and that should also be consumable via the Charms by October time. I don't know quite when, but we'll see how that polishes out. So
I'm really interested in this in the sense that I know Snap's one, like we told, just different versions of Ubuntu that you can have a snap that will work because they're contained. They can be on Xenial or on Zesty or whatnot, and the same snap. You don't need to have that's true. So they are essentially release agnostic from an Ubuntu perspective. So it is the same snap for any Ubuntu release that supports snapd and snappy. Okay, and that's because they will run against the Ubuntu core image, which is distinct from the underlying operating system. So Ubuntu core is what would run on like an IoT device or whatever that might be installing snaps. But when you run snapd on, say, a classic system like a server that's been Ubuntu server installed, you get Ubuntu core and then you get your snap on top of that. They're both delivered as snaps, but because you've got that kind of insulation layer of Ubuntu core on top of the host OS, you can basically use the same snap anywhere. And that leads me to kind of the next thing, which is probably a little bit ahead of where you guys are looking at right now, but I find it really interesting. I know that there's been a lot of folks that have built and delivered OpenStack distributions to customers based on Ubuntu OpenStack, right? Maybe they don't use the Charms or whatnot, but they've used the deb packages and supported those OpenStacks out there on a lot of the hard work that you guys have done. I'm really interested to kind of look at, I wonder if snaps and the fact that they can actually be OS agnostic a little bit, anywhere that snapd and such can run, whether or not we may actually see an Ubuntu OpenStack install on a non-Ubuntu OS delivered, or is that just crazy talking? No one would ever do that in real life.
In theory, that could work. Snaps work on Debian. So you could have Ubuntu Snapshot on Debian, on Arch, on CentOS. Yeah, in theory, those things should work. Probably not in our initial tasting matrix.
No, and that's what I'm going about down the road. I think it's interesting to think about if you are delivering software. One of the interesting things with snaps is it may break you out of a bit of the which distro of Linux do you deliver the bytes for. paradigm, and I think that's really interesting for software that you need to go out and support, but that oftentimes customers have we're a shop that only does X or Y, or a shop that only does Z, and you end up having to test and build and all this stuff. The matrix gets much wider, and I'm curious whether or not Snaps help narrow that down at all.
A bit, yeah, I think so. And we've got a lot of proving to do in the next 12 months. And don't worry, people who like devs, we're still doing devs, so they're not gone. So we you can consume the current OpenStack pipe milestone via the Cloud Archive like you've always been able to. So we're working on developing Snaps alongside devs, and then hopefully we'll have a fantastic story there, and people will transition away from devs longer term. Is the plan. But there's a lot of work to do, a lot of challenges to overcome, and we'll be working through that in the next 12 months. So.
That's awesome. Hey, James, I just wanted to say congratulations on the Giving Tree Award. That's huge.
Oh, thanks.
Man.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. So there we go. Can you all see that?
Oh, you've got a medal. Wait a
I got a
minute.
medal and everything. So some kind person in the community nominated me for a community award, which I received at the OpenStack event in Boston 2 weeks ago. So
Bravo.
thank you very much, whoever that was. I still haven't tracked you down.
Secret admirer from afar.
I didn't recognize the words or the phrasing, so they've done well to hide themselves.
Say no good deed goes unpunished. There you go. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. It was nice to be appreciated as always.
Else, real quick, how does the snapping of the OpenStack services change the way that they're configured via Charms? Will all of the configuration be done via Snap now?
So, to suffice to say, there's a few details to work out there yet. I think we're still envisaging that most of the configuration of the service is done via a configuration file, and that will be directly managed by the charm. We're trying to make the Snap experience quite transferable for people who are already using Deps. So the kind of directory structure for the configuration files that the Snap daemons use is like a chrooted etc, if you like, so that only the Snap can see that part. But the idea is that people can just kind of sandbox where they're writing config files out to. So instead of writing to etc keystone, they're writing to var snap keystone common etc keystone. So they just have to prefix the path, and things should just hang together. So the idea is that it should be a transferable experience, and we're trying to make that easy so that people who we want to adopt Snaps longer term can find that a relatively easy transition. So
awesome.
I gotta love it. You gotta say that you guys do awesome stuff in the sense that I know often people are like, oh, I don't know if I could charm my software, and you go, well, look, OpenStack's charmed up and works, and if you can do OpenStack, you can do anything. I feel like we're heading towards a Snap argument for the same thing, where it's I don't know if I could snap my software or whatnot. Well, if you can snap up OpenStack and make it work, I'm pretty darn sure it can work for whatever stuff you've got sitting around.
Quite possibly so. Quite possibly so. It does. And the work the Snapcraft team have done on the tooling to build Snaps is really good, really good. So when we did the initial kind of Snap investigation, the Python plugin was a little limited, but between myself and a guy in the community, we contributed some additional features to that to make it work really well for the OpenStack way of distribution and requirements management. So.
Awesome.
It's been a good experience so far.
So you mentioned some of this going into the next release. What other interesting things should folks know are coming in the pipeline for August?
Let's have a look. So we've got a couple of new things. So we've got the normal grind of like making sure the next OpenStack release works well and it's all deployable on day 0. The two new features that big new features are we are working on a Gluster charm. So we've had a kind of experimental kind of try it, your mileage may vary type Gluster charm for a while, which we haven't released per se. Chris and the team has been working on that for a while. But we think there's enough kind of value there and enough people who want to use it now that we want to put that on a more solid footing. So we're looking at so there's a little bit of a rewrite going on there to get it in line with the rest of the OpenStack Charm set. But that should be by October, I think, is the target. So for the 17.10 release of Ubuntu, and it's a new charm, so we can put that in outside of our normal release cadence, which is quite nice. We should have a kind of production ready Gluster charm for people to use. Baseline that
go ahead. Sorry,
we're going to baseline that on the 3.10 series of Gluster, which is the current latest stable release.
Okay. What's the elevator pitch for when I would look at using Gluster versus Ceph or something else for some of my storage needs?
The Gluster, if you want a shared file system to use across multiple machines. Ceph, if you want to consume block devices. Okay. So from an OpenStack perspective, that Ceph plugs really well into Cinder for presenting block devices to virtual machines. Gluster plugs well into Manila, which is about presenting shared file systems to virtual machines. So there's subtly different use cases.
Gotcha.
So that's where the pitch is and how the integration works into OpenStack. So I think we will be working on a Manila integration. I'm not quite sure whether that's going to land for October or not yet. We'll have to see how the charm work develops, but it will be there or shortly thereafter, I think. So that's quite exciting, and I think Chris Holcomb is working on that. He's quite hyped about it. He's deployed Gluster at scale at a previous employer before, so he knows all the bad bits and the hardship and how to work through those. So hopefully that will be a great experience for people. The second thing that we're focused on this cycle is a bit of a refresh of the telemetry stack for OpenStack. So it turns out that collecting metrics about all the things your cloud is doing is quite hard. So like things like how many images and that sort of stuff is really easy. But when you need to collect metrics on what 10,000 virtual machines are doing so that you can drive actions across your cloud based on alarms and thresholds being met, that actually turns into a little bit of a big data problem, it turns out. So the telemetry team upstream in the OpenStack project have done quite a lot of refactoring and rework across the telemetry stack, which originated as a project called Celometer. Celometer used a MongoDB backend for data storage, but at scale, it really didn't work particularly well. So there's been a lot of refactoring and splitting out. So telemetry now, it really consists of three-ish projects. So there's AODH, which is around alarming, Gnocchi, which is around data. It's basically time series as a service. It's the underlying data storage mechanism for storing the metrics that are collected across your cloud. And Panko, which is a newer service, which probably won't form part of our initial refresh, and then Celometer plugs into the kind of middle of that still. So right now you can deploy Celometer and AODH with the current charm set. However, Gnocchi is being preferred and has proven better scale than Celometer. So we should have Gnocchi charms by August, October, and a better story in terms of telemetry data storage for a cloud. It looks like the default backing store for Gnocchi is, or the preferred backing store for Gnocchi is Ceph. So basically, Gnocchi consists of an index, which is stored in a relational database, and a backend data store for the larger data volume, which is stored in Ceph. So fortunately, we have all those other things charmed already. So hopefully, this will be a relatively short integration to get this plugged in and figure out the best way to deploy it.
It's always good when you have nice components that can work together, right? Like you always hope that someone comes along and goes, I need something, and they find 80% already there, and they can take their 20% of work and plug it in and get the hole that they need, kind of thing. So, do me a favor. The Gnocchi and Ceph you can use outside of OpenStack. Gnocchi I assume you could use outside of OpenStack, and just as a general.
Yes, in theory, yes, you can. It has kind of a few different integrations. So it has a metrics-D data collector mechanism, so you don't have to go for a RESTful API to send it data. So it's more kind of streamy. It has a stats-D method as well. interestingly, it's actually as a project just kind of moved itself out of OpenStack. So although it's still an integral part of an OpenStack deployment, it's Julian, the current PTL, has said actually this has a much more general application. So we're going to kind of spin this off and have Gnocchi as a standalone project. So that's now just under a different GitHub organization and they'll be using a lot more of the standard GitHub integrations for review and testing and stuff like that.
Okay, cool, interesting. Yeah, so I'd be curious at some point we should chat with them about kind of where Gnocchi fits in versus, say, a Prometheus and kind of the fundamental differences. I assume there's some, if they're supporting metric D and stat D, that they're much more of maybe push data versus pull data and stuff like Prometheus and some other kind of.
Yeah, that said, that the other thing that's currently lacking in our telemetry stack is any visualization of the data in it. It's all API driven at the moment. And that's because it turned out that a Django application in the form of OpenStack dashboard wasn't a very good way of doing that. And the pages just tended to time out the number of API calls they were doing. So the revised stack will actually use Grafana with the Gnocchi plugin to directly query the underlying time series database. So I know that's a popular tool set for building up dashboards. So that should be, in my opinion, much more consumable and configurable for end users than the solutions have been around Telemetry in the past.
Yeah, I know I played with that for visualizing metrics around Juju controllers and stuff a little while ago. If you go back a few Juju shows, Grafana had some really nice dashboard building mechanisms built in, which is really kind of cool. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. I know, I'll have to see. One of the things I liked about it was I could put together kind of a pretty big dashboard for users to kind of be able to just upload here's what Rick thinks are interesting about controllers. And so it'd be kind of cool to have this, ship out with a few baked in dashboards of interesting things to watch on your OpenStack, just out of the box, ready to go, rather than build your own.
Yeah. So talking about dashboards, we also use Grafana for monitoring the charm download statistics from the charm store. And across all of our OpenStack charms, in the last 2 weeks, we just hit 1 million charm total downloads across the charm set. So yeah, I was like, whoa.
Oh, 1 million downloads of OpenStack.
1 million downloads, and that's since they started getting recorded. And I don't know quite how long that is, but that's still quite an impressive number. And our most popular charm out of the charm set at the moment is RabbitMQ Server, and I know that's used outside of OpenStack as well. So I suspect it gets more it's a more general purpose charm rather than a specific one, but it outcompetes its nearest rival by at least 40,000 downloads over that period. So
well, that's cool. All right, so let's wrap up by giving folks kind of an idea of if they want to get involved, if they want to play with the OpenStack, play with the charms, participate, join the community, help out with some of these new software that needs to get charmed up and going with the kind of Gnocchi and Grafana tie-ins. How would they go about this?
Good question. So if you're interested, the first place to go is #OpenStack-charms on Freenode IRC. That's where the OpenStack Charms community hangs out, whether you're a user or a developer of a charms, or you're a vendor of an SDN platform who wants to get things integrated. You'll find all those people there. So that's a good first base to stop in. The charm guide is our contributor documentation. So
we'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. But yeah, it's meant to be a bit of an onboarding document for how to get started with charm development. How we do testing, how we write charms, how to write a new charm, how to do a stable update to an existing charm, when the meetings are, because we have a weekly team meeting and stuff like that. So it's a good first touch to get involved. We're currently looking for people who deploy OpenStack using Juju and Charms to help us with a bit of an effort to improve our end user documentation. So a lot of the charms have READMEs in them, but unfortunately, a README and a charm for OpenStack is
one of a dozen different
in value, because a deployment is massive. Like it's 25 charms now to deploy OpenStack. So really, we want a deployment guide for OpenStack. We've got we found there's a place for us to do that as part of the official OpenStack documentation. So I'll be putting together an effort over the next 6 months to put together our first deployment guide, end-to-end deployment guide for deploying OpenStack on hardware using MAS and all the various bits and pieces that entails. I know that I've talked to a lot of people on IRC, and I've helped a lot of people on IRC, and I hope a lot of those people come back and say, well, I remember this bit was a bit gnarly and you could improve it there. And that's great from a product feedback perspective for the various different projects involved, but also that's also absolute gold dust to add to the deployment guide in terms of how to get stuff done with this tool stack now. So that's an initiative I've been leading. If you're interested, ping me on James Page on Freenode IRC, or I'm around, so you can generally find me. So
it's always good. Yeah. Testing out documentation. Great new contributor way to get in is to help out by proofing the documentation, try it out, make sure it all works as proper.
Absolutely.
And participate. So awesome.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing we're going to try and do is get people on board with MAS a little bit earlier than they might do. So a lot of times people's first touch with OpenStack and Juju is with the LXD provider using the OpenStack on LXD stuff we've put together, which is very neat and it's great because you can do it all on your laptop and it works pretty well. But there's kind of then a bit of a jump to move to understanding MAS and all the concepts there when you actually want to do it on hardware. So the newest release of MAS has some neat features which were actually designed for testing of the composable infrastructure stuff from Intel, but allow you to basically take a server and kind of slice it up using MAS into virtual machines. So I think we're gonna look and see if we can do I've got one server or I've got a fairly beefy desktop or laptop. How do I get started with MAS, doing an all-in-one deployment to learn MAS at the same time as I'm learning how to deploy OpenStack using Juju? So
that'd be great. I know I run a MAS out of my basement, and I use LXD as well. It's one of those right tool for the right job kind of things. But there are sometimes there's just not. It's irreplaceable to have that kind of bare metal view. With MAS on top, just makes it so nice and easy to really bang on stuff. So.
Yep. So the other thing to look out for is our development summaries that we've started doing. So the first one of those went out on Monday. You can catch those on Planet OpenStack or on Planet Ubuntu. They go out on both channels. And that's actually a more general Ubuntu OpenStack summary, but it does cover the OpenStack Charms works as a section, as well as what's going on in distribution with devs and snaps and storage and whatever it might be. Hopefully there'll be fresh content each week about what's going on. So
it sounds like if you're interested in OpenStack, that's a great catch-all for a diverse set of stuff going on. So you should probably go grab that. All right, we'll make sure to try to grab a link to that in the show notes. All right. Well, thank you all. I appreciate you guys joining and talking OpenStack. It's always fun to see what's going on and what's new in this huge community project and how it fits in with Juju, and we can make things nice and easy to get started, get your deployments going. So with that, I say we all run away and go to our separate corners. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, Rick. Bye.
Thanks, guys.